Lincoln was en route to their third debate to be held in Jonesboro on September 15th, when he spoke here in Greenville on September 13th, 1858. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Republican candidate for the United States Senate, Abraham Lincoln.
Thank you all for coming this evening. Kevin, is that right? I also love books. I've always said to me, a friend is somebody who can get me a book I haven't read yet. I really enjoy finding somebody else who enjoys books as much as I do. When you know something about somebody because they read books, then you really know something about them. I think that about you, that speaks volumes. I understand that this facility has been provided by Elmira College. Is that right?
It was at one time.
Yes, and I'm sure that a good many women will be well educated. My wife is more educated than myself. I don't know if y'all are aware of that. I've only had about 1 year's worth of schooling. If you add up all the schooling that I did together, you might get as much as a year. My wife has been to finishing school. She speaks French. So, whenever she gets really angry, sometimes I don't understand her. Is Jediah Alexander here? No? I assumed that he would be here. I wrote a letter to him earlier this past summer. He was starting up a newspaper here, and let's see. I wrote him a letter last May. My dear sir, I reached home. Excuse me. After a while, you get to where you kind of need these. I know it was in May anyway. I reached home a week ago and found yours of the 1st, of May, of course. It's May the 15th, writing this, inviting me to name a time to meet and address a political meeting in Bond County. It is too early, considering that when I once begin making political speeches, I shall have no respite till November. The labor of that I might endure, but I really cannot spare the time from my business. Nearer the time, I will try to meet the people of Bond if they desire. I can only say now that, as I understand, there remains all the difference there ever was between Judge Douglas and the Republicans, they insisting that Congress shall, and he insisting that Congress shall not keep slavery out of the territories before and up to the time they form state constitutions. I was seriously hoping I was not going to be invited to dance. I cannot dance. Well, everybody can dance, but nobody can dance. I can't dance well. No Republican has ever contended that when a constitution is to be formed, any but the people of the territory shall form it. Republicans have never contended that Congress should dictate a constitution to any state or territory But they have contended that the people shall be perfectly free to form their constitution in their own way, as perfectly free from the presence of slavery among them as from every other improper influence. In voting together in opposition to a constitution being forced upon the people of Kansas, neither Judge Douglas nor the Republicans has conceded anything which was ever in dispute between them. Yours very truly, A. Lincoln. So I'm very disappointed that Mr. Alexander is not here. I hope his paper, The Advocate, does well. He just started this in the past year or so, I understand. And and some of y'all might not be aware of the fact that I have also owned a newspaper myself, a German language newspaper. It's partly to help get the information out that some folks would prefer to have out. We have new residents of the state coming in, and it's important for them to get accurate information. Republican information, I mean. But I repeat myself. Do I understand right that this setting has been the event has been sponsored by a historical society and a genealogical society? Very nice. I very much appreciate that. I very much enjoy and appreciate genealogical societies because that's two things that I've always been in favor of, being genial and logical. We have just got done, Judge Douglas and myself, with a debate in Freeport and in Ottawa before that, way up there in northern parts of the state. And now we're fixing to head down almost all the way as far down into the south part of the state as you can get, down to Jonesboro in a few days. You would notice that I would refer to Stephen Douglas as Judge Douglas. That is to give him all the honor that is properly his, but not to refer to the office which we are contending for, which he now holds. If you refer to him with that prefix, then that gives him a little more recognition than he deserves, because somebody standing here is aiming for that position himself. So, he has accused me of being an abolitionist, which I don't know how y'all are aware of, but we are, I suppose, right now in that part of the state where, well, the northern part of the state is a lot more northern in a lot of ways than the southern part of the state. The farther south you get in the state of Illinois, it's kind of like a microcosm of the whole country. You have the northern part of the state and the southern part of the state, and sometimes they don't see things eye to eye. And so he has accused me of being an abolitionist. And I would say that I hold that the Declaration of Independence is our original founding document for this country. And in it, our founders said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now, Stephen Douglas says, and has stated quite plainly, that he believes that the founders were not referring to Negroes whenever they said that. that this was a country that was founded and made for white folks, and that the black man is not the equal of the white man. And some would even go so far as to say that slavery is their natural condition. I would hold that slavery is one of those curious situations where if there are some people who say that slavery is a positive good. I have heard people say this. That for some people, slavery is their natural condition, and that if you do not enslave them, you're going against nature. And you're going even to say so far as that you're going against nature's God if you do not enslave them. It is a curious thing that if slavery is a good thing, it is the only good thing that people always want for somebody else, but they never want any of it for themselves. Isn't it curious how it could be like that? Every other thing that you believe is good, you would care to have some, wouldn't you? Well, if it's good, why don't they want some? He has also stated that he says that I am an amalgamationist. You don't even know what that is, do you? That it is pleasant to hear that is a foreign idea or concept to y'all. Well, if some people are saying that the Negro and the white folks are completely equal, then that means that anybody should be able to marry anybody else. And that is not a compliment. That's something that a lot of people get tired with, and it runs down your reputation to be said that you're a person like that. Now, and of course, like I said, Illinois is a whole lot like the whole country. The farther south you go, the more different you are from the place you just left from. And we're just fixing to go down to Jonesboro, which is, like I said, just about as far south in Illinois as you can get and still be in Illinois. I intend to say that just because I do not want to have a black woman as my slave, it does not necessarily follow that I must make her my wife. I could just leave her alone. It seems that our Creator has made roughly enough white men to be married to the white women and enough black men to be married to all the black women. And so, for God's sake, let them be so married. And for some few who might think that this is too far to go to say about such things, that abolitionism is good and that perhaps even this that I just spoke of could also be good for some people. You need to be aware of something called triangulation that politicians do and lawyers do, where sometimes you might have multiple topics that are all working here together, and you might not be able to get everybody to agree on every part of all of those things. So you tease out the most important piece and let the others go. Whenever I was working as a lawyer one time, I had a feller who was an educated, a college educated lawyer. And he thought that he was walking into this backwoods, backwater area, and all these fellows who are self-educated in the law, and he could take advantage of them and do quite well. And he discovered me on the other side of this case. And I sound like I come from just where I come from. and he knew what kind of education I had in the law. He thought things was going to be just fine. And I was giving away legal points one after the other. He'd make some appeal, and I would stand up and say, "Well, Your Honor, I reckon that's how I can allow that," or And he thought he was making all the advantage. He was getting all these legal points in this case. He didn't realize that what I was doing, it was kind of like playing chess where you're giving away all the little pieces. He thought that he was gaining something, but all he was gaining was all these little worthless pieces that didn't amount to anything. And I was carefully sequestering and keeping aside all the important pieces of this case for myself. And whenever we got done with the case, he had lost, and he had no idea how it happened. And a little bit like this, what I'm saying here about what would be called amalgamationists, race mixings, or to say that somebody is an abolitionist. That's a radical thing to say. We can set those all aside and talk about the central issue. The black man. Is he a man? Or is he not a man? Now, Stephen Douglas has this position called popular sovereignty. Let the people decide. Now it sounds good when you say it. I can say it pretty much the way he would say it. Suppose you go into Kansas or Nebraska territory and you take all the risks that go along with that to set up farming. You start towns, businesses, governments, everything. And whenever you get far enough, you start to set up your own constitutions and laws, and somebody was to tell you, "Oh, that's fine, but you can't make all your laws. You have to make some of the laws be what we want to make you have." How would that sit with you? So, well, this is our place. We want to make our laws for our place. See, that's popular sovereignty. But it's not about all the laws that he's speaking. He's speaking particularly about slavery. See, we've had the Missouri Compromise for years, and it has served us well. Of course, it doesn't solve a problem. Compromises never actually solve problems, but they put it off for a while, and people are more or less satisfied. We've had states joining the Union 2 at a time, one in the North and one in the South, to keep balance in Congress, and no slavery above that line except for Missouri, which was already there, slavery there. But popular sovereignty will do away with that. To let the people decide. We could have slave states in the North, in Kansas or Nebraska, or anywhere for that matter. Now, the black man, as I said, is he a man or is he not a man? A popular sovereignty is built on a thing called the law of self-determination. Do you not all love this law of self-determination? I was just waiting to see if there was any adherence. Y'all have not heard of this, but you live by it every day. The basis of this law is that laws only have effect within the borders or jurisdiction of those who created it. So our federal laws have jurisdiction only inside the borders of our country. And if you go smaller, state laws are only in effect inside that state, and local laws are in effect only inside in that city or county or whatever the region is. There is one unit of government which is often overlooked, but it is a real unit of government. That is the individual. One person is a unit of government. And if you follow all the federal laws, all the state laws, all the local laws, then as one unit of government, you can then make your own rules about yourself and what you want to do. You see how that works? Well, now, the black man. Is he a man or is he not a man? Logically thinking, suppose that he is not a man, but he's just property. For the sake of argument, if that is the case, then anybody can do what he wants with him, just like any other property. But now, logically think the other way. Suppose that he is not property, but that he is actually a man. That law of self-determination, then it applies to him too, don't it? He should get to do what he wants with himself and with the product of his labor. Now, we are, as individuals, we are all different. But in our Declaration of Independence, it says we are all created equal. And equal and identical are not the same thing. I can readily agree that the black man may not be my equal in every respect. But in respect to the right to eat the bread that he has earned by the sweat of his own brow, and not have to ask anybody else for permission to do it, in that respect, that black man is my equal. And he is the equal of Stephen Douglas. He's the equal of every man in this land. I have even been so far as making the case that, as the case has been made against me, that I'm willing to abolish slavery where people don't want it abolished, like in the District of Columbia. I have said, no, I am not interested in doing that. The people who are the slave owners, if the majority of the people in the District of Columbia are willing to vote down slavery, I'd be willing then for slavery to be excluded from there, but by them. And then the slave owners need to be compensated for their loss, and to do this gradually over time. This is not an extreme position, but it is consistent with a black man actually being a man and doing something about it. I had one time was it in Ottawa? I forget. I said it like this. I suppose a good many of you are parents, or a lot of you have at least had parents. So, supposing as a parent, you put your child to bed at night, and like a good parent, you might go in a little while later to check on that child and see how it's doing along. Suppose you were to do that, to go in and check on your child, and to discover that there are snakes in that bed with that child. Dangerous snakes. what would you do? Every parent in this room has stopped and thought very seriously at that moment when I just said that. What would you do? You care about your child. All parents care about their children. But exactly how are you going to fix this situation? If you're not very, very careful, you could make the problem worse by trying to fix it. Can you see how that might be the case? Much like that with slavery. It is a wrong. Our founders acknowledged it as a wrong and believed that it would be on its way to extinction and be gone before now. We have it here among us, and we need to do something about it, but we must be very careful. We could make things worse when we're trying to make things better. And about slavery, do you know that sometimes ministers do not argue with one another. Sometimes they discuss things that are in Scriptures. I would not say that ministers argue, but they do discuss vigorously at times things that are in Scripture. And at one point, they were talking about a particular word that was in a verse and going back and forth what it meant. And finally, one of the ministers got out his Bible, opened it up to that salient point, and put his finger right under that word in that verse and said, there it is right there. Do you see it? The other minister said, well, of course I see it. Then the first minister took out a $20 gold piece out of his pocket and put it over that word and says, there, now do you see it? The point here is that folks in the South and those who are willing to support and help the cause of slavery, if they see slavery as it actually is, they have to see it through the value of all those slaves, which is a pretty thick coating. Sometimes, believe it or not, money can obscure the truth. If there was no money involved, a good many more folks would be willing to see slavery for what it is. Suppose a fellow owns a slave, and you or I were to walk up to him and have a conversation with him about slavery, and he is sitting under a tree watching his slave work out there in the field. He's drinking a refreshing drink. And you or I are trying to convince him of how improper and wrong slavery is. How far are we going to get in this conversation? That fella who's watching his slave work out in the field, if he is to start agreeing with us, his next step would be he would have to put down that cool, refreshing drink and take off his nice, comfortable, soft gloves and put on some hard work gloves and go out there and do some of that work himself. How is this conversation ever going to get anywhere? The Constitution and the laws allow slavery to be where it is. And elected officials take an oath of allegiance to that Constitution. However, the Constitution says nothing about the new territories or the new law, the new states that would come out of those territories. Because the Constitution is silent on those matters, I believe that consistent with the Constitution, we can restrain slavery from those places, and slavery will gradually die the death that it richly deserves to die. We can do that without harming those people who own slaves at this point, without causing a ruckus or a fuss. Stephen Douglas has accused me, first off, he accused me by complimenting me. You have to be careful when an opponent of yours compliments you. Do some of y'all know that I used to help keep a store in New Salem some years ago? Well, we sold a good many things in that store, and he told everybody out and proud that I was a very good bartender. Stephen Douglas is well known for his ability to drink. And whenever, in our debates are 3 hours at a whack, all on one topic, whether slavery can be allowed to expand into the new territories, or can it be properly restricted from those territories. The first fellow to speak will speak for an hour. The second fellow will speak for an hour and a half. And then the first fellow will have a rebuttal or a rejoinder for the last half hour. So we have equal time. And because I've challenged him, and we have 7 debates scheduled, he will get to open and close, which is the stronger point in 4 of those 7. So he told everybody that I was a very good bartender, and whenever I got my turn, I stood up and I said, it is true that whenever I was helping keep a store in New Salem, we did sell alcohol, and there were times that we sold it by the glass. However, the distinction between myself and Judge Douglas is this. I have since left my side of the bar, but he has clung as tenaciously as ever to his own. And I haven't even been in politics for years. He accused me of being a two-faced politician. He's the incumbent senator from Illinois, and he's telling everybody that I'm a two-faced politician. I said, I will just leave it to the audience. Supposing I had another face, you think I'd still be using this one? Slavery is wrong. All honest people can see that it is wrong. In closing, I said, back to this again. This is something that I wrote for the closing of a debate. I think I'll get to use this. That is the real issue. That is the issue that will continue in this country when these poor tongues of Judge Douglas and myself shall be silent. It is the eternal struggle between these two principles, right and wrong, throughout the world. They are the two principles that have stood face to face from the beginning of time and will ever continue to struggle. The one is the common right of humanity, and the other, the divine right of kings. It is the same principle in whatever shape it develops itself. It is the same spirit that says, you work and toil and earn bread, and I'll eat it. No matter what shape it comes, whether from the mouth of a king who seeks to bestride the people of his own nation and live by the fruit of their labor, or from one race of men as an apology to enslaving another race, it is the same tyrannical principle.